Welcome to the NC DWI Guy podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NC DWI Guy, Jake Minnick.
Before we dive into today's episode of the podcast, I wanted to let you know that coming up in June, we are going to be doing a special 5-part series on the podcast on attacking the results of breath testing. Really, to begin with, we're going to spend a couple of episodes talking with toxicology expert Andy Ewens from Ewens Toxicology. He is an expert on toxicology. He's going to help us understand the science behind breath testing and get a better understanding of the science specifically utilized kind of in the framework of the ECIR2 device. We are then going to follow up with several incredible attorneys, James Nisi, Matthew Davenport, and Stephen Lindsay, to talk about different kind of methods of understanding the science behind breath testing, as well as how to effectively attack this start to finish on your case. So James Nisi, we're going to talk about a couple of different ways of using kind of the math that is used in breath testing to actually convey to the jury what's going on and why this is important in your particular case. With Matthew Davenport, we're going to talk about State versus Neyron, State versus Simmons, and kind of what does it mean, this language presume impaired, and some of the implications on that. And then finally, we will close out the 5-part series with Steve Lindsay giving us some helpful information on attacking the breath testing device in closing arguments. So I just wanted to put that on your radar. It's going to be a really fun and I think informational series coming up in June. So make sure that you tune into that. And with that, we'll go ahead and dive into today's episode. Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 54 of the NC DWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, we have Zeb Smathers. Zeb has been practicing law for over 10 years. He primarily practices out of Haywood County, but goes to a bunch of other counties in the area. Zeb also is got a lot going on the political scene as mayor of the town of Canton. And so we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit as well. But Zeb, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. One of the things that I've always appreciated about practicing when you're in the courtroom is just the persona that you bring into the courtroom, both just confident and funny. And it's a great combination for getting good results for your clients. So we'll dive into that as well. But I am very excited about having you on.
Well, I appreciate being on this podcast. There is one good lawyer on this podcast and me.
See, there's the humor. I love it.
No, I think it really is, you do a great job, not just as a trial lawyer, but doing opportunities like this, because there's so much of the practice of law than what you see in the courtroom. And that's good and bad. It is, as I tell people, no one ever comes to our office, hands us money and says, guess what great thing happened to me today.
Right,
we
exactly.
deal with people's issues and problems on top of the normal stuff. And some of us are crazy enough in our spare time to get into politics. And so I don't know which serves as more as that jail mistress, law or politics. But at the end of the day, they both are very different rivers that we swim in. But because we believe that we can help people, whether it be defending their constitutional rights, working in a domestic case, working over a land deal, or helping and make sure their trash is picked up. I mean, it is all about helping people. And I think you cannot get into the law practice or politics, no matter what your beliefs are, where you practice, unless you inherently think God gave you some talents to make a difference in people's lives. And if you're not doing it for that, then I'd rather you not be in law or politics, because we don't need any more people like that. Because But no, like you said, look good, play good. I learned that playing football at Pisgah. You may not know what you're doing, but if you look the part, people want that. And I think yes, you have to know what you're doing. You have to be trained. But I do believe when people hire an attorney, whether it be that first meeting, coming into an office, having that respect, showing up in court and looking the part, whether it's movies or whatever, that's what people expect.
Right.
I one time saw an internet meme that said, if your attorney's suit doesn't fit and they're using a flip phone, you're going to jail. And I think there's some truth to that.
Even if there's not truth to it, there's perception, which is truth, right? Like, I mean,
reality. Perception is reality. And look, at some point you can have a Tom Ford suit, but if you don't know anything about anything, at some point there's going to be a judge or a jury that's going to remind you of that. But I think when it starts, not just entering the courtroom, is how you present yourself to the client when they come in.
Right.
And before getting into sort of the next question is, anyone who comes in our office, to that person, whether it be a speeding ticket, a DWI, a custody matter, to that person, it is the biggest problem in the world. They are taking time off from their job. They understand it's going to cost some money. You have to treat each person, whether it's a little old lady with a speeding ticket or a major felony case, to each of them, they went to bed last night thinking about it. They woke up this morning thinking about it, and they're coming to you for help. So you have to treat each person with the respect that their problem is the biggest in the world. And if you do that, I think everything else sort of comes,
I totally agree. The confidence in your services really begins with that first impression. If you can make that kind of strong first impression, it's not only about kind of just trying to kind of, bring in that potential client, right? And actually have them hire you. It's about conveying to the person, I care about what I do, and you can kind of trust that this is going to go as well as it possibly can because I'm going to do everything for you. That begins with the clothes that you're wearing, the way that your office is laid out, whether you have a bunch of papers all over the place or you kind of seem organized. All of that stuff makes a huge difference in terms of the trust factor.
And and you do a great job with police. And I've always been, when you can try a hell of a case, but also I've seen, because a lot of times, there are cases that people are guilty. I think people think there's always something done. Think about it. I think defense attorneys, we serve as constitutional backstops, because if law enforcement does their job, the district attorney's office does their job, there really should not be an issue. There should be no one in that courtroom that is not guilty of something. If they are, then there is a problem with the system. And it is our job to make sure that people's rights are taken care of. We deal with poverty issues, mental health issues. But I think in working with the plea, a lot of times clients know that they're guilty, especially like a DWI. They want someone to stand beside them, facing one of the most difficult times of their life, and to stand up in front of a judge, a jury, the people in the courtroom with respect and say, I am willing to stand with you in the gates of hell, and at least say, this is how they're addressing these problems.
Yes.
This is why this happened. Everyone has a story to tell. And I think some lawyers can do a better job understanding that everyone has a story to tell. I don't care how tough they act. They're embarrassed. They wish they were not there.
Yes.
Probably led to family issues and employment issues. But part of our job is to stand up there and say, there's more to the story, and to treat them as a friend. 99% of my clients I see as friends, because I love hearing about those stories. And also, I tell each of my clients, talking about that first meeting with my criminal clients, I say, my job is to help you. There's two people you don't lie to, your mama and your lawyer. I need you to tell me the truth. I'm here to judge you. I'm here to help you. And you can watch that change happen with them, because, they're judging themselves. They're scared. Yes. They need to see in lawyers that, we dig deep on anybody, anywhere. You're going to find something. We are all equal. And And that just sort of brings out something, because at that point they see, hey, this is a guy that's just not taking my money and going to the legal part. He's here to do more. Judge Brad Letts, our resident Superior Court judge, when I first started practicing, he gave me a piece of advice that I still follow today. Our bar license in this state say attorney and counselor of law. A lot what we do as attorneys, especially in these small areas or even the larger areas, it's counseling. It's being a friend. It's being someone there to help. We need to remember that. So I've jibber-jabbered.
I think there are so many great points brought out in there. And one of the things that, again, I think that I've seen you do particularly well in the courtroom is, instead of just kind of having your client standing idly by during any type of interaction with the court, whether it's a continuance, a plea, whatever it might be, bond hearing, whatever it is that the client is kind of up there standing next to you. I think a lot of times it feels like, from our perspective, that there's just a conversation going on back and forth between us and the judge, and the client is just kind of this person that is required to stand up here. You do a very good job of kind of this communication between judge and client, and kind of body language, even turning towards client at certain times during those hearings, going back to judge, sometimes asking your client a question or addressing your client directly, or telling your client to speak to the judge. There is a real communication that is going on. And so you're acting as like a facilitator of the client's story to the judge, as opposed to just kind of this, statue client that is sitting over here that is just kind of waiting for the end decision. So that, I think, is a really powerful thing to focus in on. And for young attorneys out there, there is a real art to that kind of communication of bringing your client into the hearing and bringing their story into the hearing.
Well, and I don't want to downplay it, because you're absolutely right. And I hate calling it, again, not downplaying it and calling it a show, because It sort of sounds like it's insincere. But you have to understand, there is a reason to me that in most courthouses, in fact, all of them I've ever been to, a judge is elevated.
Right.
And, whether it be culture, movies, whatever, it is important, especially the district court level and the superior court level, to realize that judge sits above as something. Because, look, most people, they're not going to listen to lawyers, politicians, TV. I mean, we are living in a society where all of us, whatever our political beliefs are, we look at some of these fundamental institutions and we're like, they just, the world's changed. I do believe that, for the most part, that people still buy into the inherent power of a judge. And so you can take that and parlay that and get a judge to make a difference. There have been times for certain clients, especially young ones, that I will approach and I will say, I need the mama speech. I need the daddy speech. Because a lot of these, especially lower socioeconomic, they don't have moms and dads. They don't have a church family.
Right.
Have civic clubs they're involved in. They need to buy into that, because if they think that judge is on the same level as lawyers and politicians, the chances of them actually doing what they need to do is, I think, less. And in fact, I haven't told this to many people, I don't judge it how many on wins and losses or dismissals I get. What I look at are my clients coming back on probation violations, because to me that means there was a missed opportunity to make a difference and understand, hey, you need help, you need mental health treatment. But the judge plays such an important role, because people buy into that very moment between defense attorney, district attorney, the judge, and the client. And if you can turn that into a more of a natural, like a better word, show to drive that point home, because that's what they see on TV.
There's a judge that is retired out of Haywood County. You'll know who I'm trying to think of his name. He still comes regularly to Buncombe, and I see him in Haywood County. He is so good about doing this. His name is escaping me right now, but he always, anytime that I've done a plea in front of him, it's basically, going to be a 20 to 30 minute deal. And it's because
Jerry Waldell.
That's it. Judge Waldell. That's it. That's it.
No.
I love doing pleas in front of him because of the fact that he will sit there and talk directly to your client, kind of ask what went wrong, right? Like he'll have this conversation with the client directly that I agree is such a powerful thing to bring that out. He'll listen to the person's story. And then I always love this at the very end, he'll, after kind of hearing their story, asking them if they understand what went wrong, he'll say, okay, well, let me see what I can do. And I love how he says that because it conveys to them that he's going to do some sort of like special deal on their end, but it shows that he cares enough about them to kind of like craft a sentence that is specific to them. It's a really wonderful thing to watch.
A couple things. One, I love Judge Waldell for that very reason. The only time I don't love Judge Waldell is I've got to get to Buncombe County. Like
you better not have any plans.
If 1 hour, yeah. But I think he does such a good job. The flip side of that, especially being a DWI professional like you are, sometimes have to tell clients, just because law enforcement told you when you got arrested for DWI, hey, I'll be there, I'll say nice things about you at the trial. That does not mean your DWI is getting dismissed. So
that's
there's
right.
reverse of that. But, Judge Waldell, he did, this wasn't coordinated, but he said something one time that I tell clients, and it makes a difference, especially even in the criminal practice and domestic, especially in dealing with mental health issues and addiction, where I always ask sometimes, do you have any children?
Right.
And, next time you're faced with doing, an illegal substance, putting yourself in a bad situation, all you need is to pull that phone out. And if you can look at your children, your mother and father, and still decide to make a dangerous, destructive decision, you're just not there yet. Sometimes in custody cases, I'm like, let's get you help first before you fight for your children, because you're not going to be able to be a mom or a dad if you're still struggling with an addiction. And he used that one time. And to this day, I've had several clients that tell me what Judge Waldell said, carry that picture of our children with us, has made such a huge difference in their life, because something as simple as that, to remind people,
yes,
not only their role as a parent, a son, a daughter, but again, dealing with the people we deal with, not to sound cheesy, they need hope.
Right.
If
they do need hope. Yeah.
Why should they do better? Why should they stay off drugs and alcohol? Why should they keep a job? Why should they, care unless they have a reason to do that? So again, part of our job in that collective system, and the district attorney's office plays into this too, is to provide hope that better days are ahead. We're here to punish you and to deal with the issues at hand. But America loves a comeback story. This does not have to be and
that's awesome.
Again, that's just something where I wish law schools, the profession, would do a better job. We have, for better or for worse, people buy in and think that because we're lawyers that our voice carries. In small towns, people will call me and ask me advice about all sorts of things. For some reason, they think, well, he'll know what to do because he's a lawyer.
Right. I think that you have probably, just because of your ability to relate to people and seeing clients as your friends and treating them that way, I think that in a local, as a local attorney, which most of us that practice criminal defense, that's what we are. We're local attorneys. We practice in 1, 2, 3 counties, somewhere in that range, maybe a few more than that, but we stay pretty much in a single space. And, word spreads fast about that kind of thing. So I think that's always a good sign in terms of the health of your practice, when you have people that are coming back based on something that you aren't advertising that your firm does, simply to get a recommendation so that they can kind of find the right person to kind of go off on. But yeah, I mean, in terms of anything that you've done in kind of being that kind of local go-to person, how have you kind of developed that? Again, just knowing that there's a lot of attorneys out here in the audience that are kind of working in that local space.
Absolutely. Now, first off, I will say, my father is an attorney. He's practiced over 40 years, so I had a place to come to. So I don't want to sound like too much, pull your bootstraps up. But I do a different type of practice than Dad did. Dad does mostly civil. I do criminal and domestic. Like I say, he does that highbrow law. I'm in the trenches. I'm in the mud. And we need both.
Yeah.
But my advice would be, and I'll jump around a little bit. I think it goes back to law school. Again, I wish law schools, especially in this state, because North Carolina is such a special state in the union, but especially in the South, I think partly because of all the great lawyers and judges that came before us, especially in the 70s and 80s, and how they practiced law. But a lot of it is because you had people that, came from small towns like Canton. They went off to your universities. They went off to law schools, but then they returned home.
Yeah,
I know where the money and I know where the people are in this state. But in the state, there are more Cantons than Charlottes. The barbecue sauce may change. The football team changes. But if you travel from west to east, north to south, there's all these small towns. And they have school boards and schools and churches and businesses. And, I think there's such an opportunity for people to go to law school and come back and practice in even smaller markets like Asheville. You can make such a difference. I promise you, I'm not missing any meals. And you can actually help people. But I wish law schools would do a better job in showing students that's an option. That is a great option. That is what this state was built on. That's what our legal community and our bar was built on. Instead of defining success, go to a big firm, do bill of hours, go clerk, go nonprofit. Each one of those jobs is very, very important. But I think that law schools are leaving an entire part of our profession off the table. And if you want to see a stronger North Carolina, the more kids from these small communities that can return home and make a difference and run for mayor and run for school board, no matter what your political party is, and get involved and make a difference, that would have such a tremendous effect on this state because they're needed. And I miss the triangle. I went to Duke undergrad and law school at Carolina. I probably still have some tabs open on Franklin Street. But there's such an opportunity there. But when you come back to a place like Kent, I was on the court appointed list. If you do a good job for court appointed clients, when they get into a car wreck, when they need a divorce, when they have a recommendation, you made a difference on a little marijuana ticket, how they were treated.
Yes.
They will come back to you. That's how you build a practice, especially a general practice. And, I think it's harder to have a general practice than it used to be, but I do. I think I do a fair amount. I do a large amount of domestics. It's a people practice. But getting on that appointed list, that is how you build something actually with very little advertising because, again, it's amazing word of mouth, how you treat people. That gets around more than anything else. It would shock you how little advertising I do. I'll buy some football programs and all that. I'm a little bit different. I'm visible.
Yes. Yeah, I think to just jump in on that for a second, Zeb, I think, one of the to go to your point about law school, I think one of the issues in terms of like setting up the glamorous practice and why there's a problem in terms of, pushing people into clerkships or really kind of like showing such esteem for some of these big firm opportunities is that most people go into law school, I think, with good intentions, wanting to help people. I don't think most people, there was a few in my class, but I don't think there's a ton of people that go to law school because they just want to make ridiculous amounts of money. I don't think that that's the vast majority. I think most people want to go into law school to make a difference. And so it's odd because really the easiest way to make a difference is to interact with people one client at a time. So the small firms, the kind of boots on the ground, so to speak, of attorneys, that's where you can easily make a difference. And I think if that's your motivation for going into law school, then it's a lot easier to kind of live the glamour life by being in criminal defense, family law, estate planning, these things where you're actually kind of working with individuals, and marketing yourself really then becomes kind of just an extension of showing your personality to these clients. And so learning to market yourself is going to only occur by watching other attorneys, more experienced attorneys doing that. So I wish there was a little bit more of an outreach from law schools to small firms to basically say, look, we need some opportunities for law students to come in and basically learn how to have a general practice or how to have a criminal defense or a family law practice, so they can see this interaction that goes on between individuals. Because if you go and do a clerkship at, or work at a big firm, and then you ultimately don't kind of end up in that space down the road, you've really missed a lot of opportunity that you could have had during your 1L and 2L summers. That's where you can learn so much, is in the actual kind of daily grind of the office.
And I'll jump around, and I've learned in the political realm, running some campaigns, and obviously, running, for mayor here. The best political campaigns are built around campaigns that are built sincerely around the candidate, not the candidate saying, yes, I have to do this, I have to say this. Especially up here in the mountains, if you're not being sincere, we can smell a fake. I mean, we
so
and the best market is not turning you into someone you're not, but bringing out those, just personal traits that work for you. Going to law school, one thing I wish that law schools would do is, before you graduate, you have to read the essays that you sent in with your application on why you want to go to law school.
Oh, that's great.
Some people would be shocked to have some self-reflection and say, what happened to that person? Now,
I agree.
The law will find you. There are plenty of friends of mine that wanted to be, I want to be a defense attorney. Well, they're now major prosecutors, or they're in corporate law. The type of law will find you, over time. Even in your practice, you adjust on what you feel good at, what you enjoy doing, et cetera. But I think that inherent sense why most people, why do I want to go to law school? They need to be reminded of that person, because to go through law school and to learn that type of thinking and be exposed and all the challenges, again, just like our clients, you need to be reminded of hope and why you signed up for this practice. And and the money will take care of itself. I'm a big believer.
Yep, I agree.
It will. But that happiness, they don't call it the pursuit of happiness for nothing. I tell that to a lot of my clients, is that you have to pursue it. And if you're not happy, you need to do something else. If you're not happy being a lawyer, then you need to do something else. And that goes for any field, because if you don't, you will end up miserable because you didn't have the courage to do something more to pursue that happiness. And I think there's a lot of lawyers that probably wish they would do something else, not a lot, because they've gotten so far away from why they signed up for this job in the first place.
Yeah, I think to that point, and one of the things, you have this kind of like dynamic personality in the courtroom, confidence and humor. But at the end of the day, I think clients that are sitting in the courtroom watching you kind of interact with the DA or the judge, they can tell you really enjoy what you do, right? Like this is not a miserable person that is like just, trying to pay off law school loans and you're having a good time. It doesn't mean you're always smiling, but you're having a good time doing what you do.
I just love people. At the end of the day, stories. I just love the personal side of it. And again, it's just how I was raised in a family, and that's the same thing about politics. I mean, it's those stories, it's those shared trials and challenges. And I think in a small town, especially a blue collar mill town like Canton is, if that mill, and you see it in Nashville, if that mill worker or ditch digger doesn't get paid, I don't get paid. I can't change the spark plugs on my Jeep.
Right.
His job as a mechanic is just as important as mine. Somewhere down the line, they said, well, this is a different profession, but a small town, a small area will teach you a sense of equality, that person that you're representing is just as important to you. They have a skill that I don't have. I have a skill they don't have, but it takes both of us, because I cannot get to court to try their custody case if my Jeep doesn't run.
Right.
So it's all connected. And I think that there is a sense in these small areas, you learn how you're connected because, you're still in these small towns, you're still their lawyer. You're still their doctor. You're still their banker. You're still their shopkeeper. And it means something more to them. I mean, and I'm sure you get it. I mean, come Christmas times, I love bourbon, but sometimes my clients, they bring me any more bourbon to Christmas. I could open a bourbon bar up and it's just, it's just amazing because you're part of their family because you were there their time of need and you listen and tried to help. And that's the same thing in politics. They just want someone to try to listen, to make their life better and address their problems. We make it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. And I think sometimes with law, especially the interaction part of it, we overthink it, and it's pretty simple. And it's the golden rule. How would you want to be treated if you were facing your challenges? How would you want the person standing next to you to look, to sound, to respect you, to talk to your family, to have empathy? That's all we would want if you or I were standing there.
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, and and I think, just in terms of the kind of, again, value of having that respect for the client, but also having this kind of presence in the courtroom that shows the client that, again, you enjoy what you do, you're good at what you do. One of the things that I think is really important about kind of local practice is developing relationships with everybody in the courtroom. You have a really good, so for instance, yesterday I saw you in Haywood County and you were talking with each clerk, having a conversation. You're approaching the bench, you're having a conversation with the judge. You're going over to the trooper that's sitting on the, shaking hands, saying hi. And the person that is sitting in the courtroom basically says, my guy's plugged in, right? Like he's plugged into it's not even to say that you have any like special sway, but you see that. And not everybody, even people that practice locally, don't always make it a point of emphasis to go kind of talk to everybody in the courtroom and show that they're, have good relationships with everybody in the courtroom. You're not saying anything to the client, but you're like shouting at them in a way of, again, be confident with what's happening here in this moment.
And I feel a little bit bad about saying this because I'm sincere. I mean, I've always found in again, being in the mountains, we can't stand fakes. It's just easy. If you be damned for who you truly are. That's one reason we're growing in Canton. Once we started saying, hey, look, we're a mill town. We're a manufacturing town. Good things started happening instead of saying, well, why can't we be like every other tourist town?
Right.
That's who we are. We're a manufacturing. You need to be who you are. But I remember a little trick. It dawned on me. It's exactly what you said. And this is, again, I'm a little embarrassed in saying this, but, let's say it's a common like registration or something that they did community service and the case is dismissed. I don't call my client up and privately tell them, especially in pre-COVID days, we had packed courtrooms. You don't call the client up and tell them their cases. You don't whisper in their ear the case is dismissed. You go to them in the crowd and you tell them the case is dismissed. So everybody around them saying, hey, that lawyer got his case dismissed. They may not realize it was as simple as it could be.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, hey, that lawyer got that case dismissed. That may be a little redneck marketing, but it goes to exactly what you said.
I feel like, from the way that you dress, the way that you talk to other people in the courtroom, if you're doing, a good job arguing your client's case, that is, the best marketing happens in the courtroom. I mean, if you can show yourself for who you are, again, this isn't some sort of fakeness. Like I really love talking to other people in the courtroom. So it's not really difficult to like go strike up a conversation with anybody, but in terms of just the people that you're marketing to, a lot of times, especially in pre-COVID days, but we're going to be working slowly back towards that. You've got an audience of 200 people sometimes watching everything that you do, and they have nothing else going on. They didn't bring a book in with them. They can't look at their cell phone. It is literally just kind of like watching what's going on.
Give them the show. And the other piece of anyone on this podcast, if you listen to anything, especially young attorneys starting out or in law school, whatever, this may be the most important piece of advice I can give. All due respect to our judges, the most important people in any courtroom on any given moment, it's the clerks.
It is.
Those
Absolutely.
clerks can save you or they can screw you. So you treat them with the utmost respect. You bring donuts, you say thank you, because one thing I've noticed, especially with some younger attorneys, I think initially they treat clerks like legal assistants.
Yep.
I promise you, clerks carry a lot of weight. They talk, they respect, and there will be moments that having their personal cell phone number, their emails, their help will not only save your client, it will save your backside.
Yeah.
And I promise you,
and they know more than you do about these kind of issues. I mean, they know what needs to be filed, where the document is, but again, they can decide whether or not to file that reset order that you turned in.
Yep.
I'm not saying that anybody's doing it intentionally, but they can make it a point of emphasis to do it right now, or to just put you at the bottom of the pile. That's totally within their kind of realm of discretion. And that's something that we, any new attorney at the office here, this is like one of the first points of emphasis is if you are not treating the clerk well, you are going to suffer massively from that.
You will. And I wish this conversations like this, that each law school, would have, again, I've been out of law school for a while now, but still law students need to hear this. They need to hear this side of things, and then let them decide. And because you just don't hear this stuff in law school. And we all know that, but it truly, it's serious. It's not a joke. Our profession would do better. Our clients would be better served if they would hear from people like yourself, other lawyers you've had on here, DAs, and just get that people side, in that. So if you're out, if UNC Law is listening to this, I'm more than happy to come off the mountain. And if you take care of those tabs at top of the hill, we'll call it even. So.
I love that. Well, I think that's that again, kind of being the best piece of advice. Maybe that's a good place to wrap, Zeb. But yeah, if any kind of kind of parting thoughts or advice to young lawyers,
and young and old alike. I mean, God gave us these talents to be in a courtroom or not to truly help people. Now more than ever, people need sincere hearts, minds, and souls to know that in these professions that are constantly beat up, whether it's politics, lawyers, judges, the goodness of people, the goodness of the profession matters. You are now part of a profession that people are going to call at 2 a.m. because they have nowhere else to turn. I think any lawyer practicing in this field, that at some point, that you've, not to go over the top here, I know in the last year I've had 2 phone calls that I feel that I talked to people out of suicide. They had nowhere else to turn than to someone that could give them hope. We carry a lot of burdens. It is challenging. We are rewarded for it. It is hard, and it can be trying on attorneys. But we are here with talents to make a difference and to change the story on how people are treated, so they realize, hey, you know what, that lawyer treated me correctly. That judge, that district attorney treated me in a good way.
Yeah, I just to dive in real quick on that. Yeah. On that, I think when you think of what people are sharing with you in the office or over the phone, this is not something they're like going and telling other people, right? They're kind of revealing like a pretty dark secret, so to speak, to you about kind of the way that their marriage has gone, the way that their last night went in terms of getting a DWI charge, being arrested, put in the back of a patrol car. And so there is this immediate like kind of opening of trust, of kind of putting themselves out there. So there is a vulnerability, I think, created by that relationship where you do have a pretty incredible power of influence, and you can either use that consultation as a moment to kind of give hope, like you said, and kind of give the next right step forward, a path of hope down the road. Or you can just basically kind of explain the legal implications and let that die. And it's kind of, again, I think there's too much emphasis on the information side of things and not enough of, we have the ability to really like change people's lives. Like, I mean, it's totally a unique place to be in terms of, maybe high school coaches and, a select few other people have the ability to like change people's lives in the way that we do. But it's not something we should take for granted or lose sight of.
And if that becomes part of our DNA from law school and throughout the years, not only will we make differences in the profession, we will make differences in people's lives. And that sort of, and literally I'll get off here. I was as mayor after George Floyd, I remember reaching out to several African-American ministers, and one from Waynesville gave me a piece of advice that applies to so much. She said, Zeb, we all want to try to affect things thousands of miles away. But what we have to do, we have to tend to our own gardens in our own backyard.
Yes, absolutely.
And we do a good job, and we keep the weeds out, and we inspire our neighbor to do a better job with their garden, and then their neighbor is inspired. That is how you create change for the better. It is first starting, even though we want to talk about much larger things, what are you doing in your backyard? And as an attorney, no matter where you practice, you have the ability to tend to your local garden. And if you do a good job, I promise you, you will leave a difference in your community and in the profession. And it's as simple as that. And so, again, I think it's an absolute honor to be part of this. If anyone has any questions out there or complaints, to me. Maybe
you've inspired me to go be a better lawyer, Zeb. I love it. It's definitely been
maybe you and I can do it. We'll take this show on the road. We'll hit Harris Cherokee Casino up, and we'll do Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin there.
Yeah, apparently we got to go to a bar near Chapel Hill, I guess. So
yes. Well, thank you so much again. If there's anything I can do for anyone listening ever, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, and hope to see you soon, my friend.
Thanks for coming on, Zeb. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Take care. Thanks. You too, my friend.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode of the podcast. If you did, please share the podcast with another freedom fighter in the criminal defense community, and be sure to leave us a rating on iTunes. See you next time.